Welcome to the Embracing Race podcast. All episodes were recorded in advance, so don't be alarmed if the timeline seems a little bit cattywampus.
I'm so excited. I don't even know why I'm excited. I guess I'm excited because, well, this is the last day. By the time this airs, it'll be the last day of Black History Month. And I wanted to just start out with, because one of the things I love about this show that I hope is a goal for people is to learn how to be in relationship with people, right? Even with different backgrounds, different cultures, different life experiences. And as I was sharing, so because I am an oversharer, so we were supposed to record on a Friday for this episode, but a girl had to get her hair done, and I was like, "Look, Jesse, can we reschedule because I gotta get my hair done. I need to get my hair done." And the process, I have to block off time. And it's not just a time thing, but it's a time and it's blocking off time, but it's also a budget thing. Because like this hairstyle, so as I'm trying, I literally have to pull up my calendar, right? And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to pay this amount of money, it needs to last this amount of time.
Yeah.
Got to make sense. And for me to sit there, right? To sit there, because I could be like, all right, I have to sit here for 5 hours.
Yep.
To get my hair done. That could have been like 5 coaching calls. That could have been a webinar. Like, so time is money, and that's how I make my money. So it was a whole process. So when I found somebody to do these are knotless, these are called knotless braids, to do it within the budget and within the time frame, that's like not heard of. But then at the 11th hour, the original braider rescheduled my appointment, and we can't do that. Because I had a time frame, right? So I was just sharing with Jesse, I was like, I appreciate that you were able to be flexible with me, and that I was able to actually share my truth, because I don't think, like 10 years ago, I'm so serious, I would have lied. I would have been like, oh, I got something to do, or I got a doctor's appointment. I would have never went all in detail that I had to get my hair done. And because number one, people that understand, who don't understand, especially about Black women hair, they don't understand the cost associated with it. So they think that you're like wasting money and all of this. And I'm like, I didn't ask you to pay for my hair, so you shouldn't talk about costs, right? Like, we're not even having this conversation. But I trusted you enough to be honest, and I appreciate you leaning in. And then the wildest hair braiding experience ever, and Jesse was front row center in that. So I just want to say thank you. That's like a really great way to start this show and the last day of Black History Month, because like you like, I don't know, it felt like it felt very seen. Like I was seen, like I was like, like in my Black, I could be my pure Black woman self, and I didn't have to downplay it. So I appreciate you.
Of course.
I love you, friend.
What do you think has changed within you, like within the last 10 years, that because it's not just me that, like, yes, we've built a good relationship and that you feel comfortable with me, but like even just in general, if it were someone else that you knew, what has changed within you that you're like, no, I'm going to authentically say, like, no, I need to get my hair done, and not only is it cost, but it's time and it's skill. Like, you're not gonna go to some janky place just
Right.
because the budget's right.
Right.
Like what in you has shifted in the last 10 years?
That's a great question. And I just saw this post like less than an hour ago that is probably the best answer. So it's not my words.
It's okay.
But it was basically, the post was, when you know that you're enough, it doesn't matter.
Mm,
And I think I just got to a place where I know that I'm enough.
absolutely.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, look, I'm 47, so it took a long time to get there. So, like, if you're like listening and you're 25, just hang in there. Right. But I will say this, I think younger people, and I don't know how much older am I from you, Jesse? A
You
whole
are
decade
you
plus.
are a little over a decade. I'm 34.
Okay. So I and I'm not saying that I don't want, because I never want to box people in, but I do feel like this younger generation, millennials and after,
Hmm.
are more self-aware than I ever was at their age. Like
Hmm.
at 30, more self-aware at 34, more self-aware at 25, more self-aware at 25. I know some 25-year-olds that I'm like, wow, I wish I had that much confidence at 25. Right? Like,
Yeah. I feel like I don't want to like box people in either, and I could be misspeaking, but I feel like that Gen X generation is aware to a certain extent of all of their stuff, and at the same time are like, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to put it over here and go about my life, and I'm okay, and that's fine. Millennials are just balls of trauma, and they're aware of their trauma and they're trying to fix their trauma, but they're just trauma. Like their whole life is trauma. And then Gen Z is like, fuck it. We're fine. Like we have shit going on, but like we're just like, exactly what you said. Like we're enough. We're fine. We're gonna do what we need to do and screw everybody who's in our way. And Gen Alpha, oh gosh, I don't even know. They're coming around the bend and they just don't give two shits about anybody. So
right.
in the best way, like they're gonna change the world. But
Yeah.
are you too, like Gen Alpha, interested in being a change in the world? Are you interested in sponsoring our podcast? Email embracingracepodcast@gmail.com for more information about sponsorship. Here's a little bit of information about our current sponsors.
The Embracing Race podcast is sponsored by the Gen Out Youth Chorus. Gen Out is an outreach ensemble of the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. Gen Out's mission is to give young LGBTQ plus and allied youth a voice to connect to the community. The ensemble is open to all singers between the ages of 13 and 18. For more information, contact www.gmcw.org. Isn't it our hope that we could come together as a society across the chasm of race and become the beloved community that Dr. King imagined? Interwoven Congregation's mission is to organize and support partnerships between faith communities with different racial compositions in order to foster racial justice and healing. For more information, visit interwovencongregations.org. HOD Records. It is not HOD, but it is HOD, no periods in between. HOD Records is a talent and artist development company that specializes in artistry development and content creation. Serving the DMV and beyond, HOD creates a family centered management style that promotes a collaborative spirit. Check out HOD Records on all social media platforms and visit hodrecords.media for more information. Thank you all to our sponsors. So yeah, all right. Well, topic hot off the presses is Scott Adams. So for those of you who don't know who Scott Adams is, he is a comic strip writer of the famed comic strip Dilbert. And I believe, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dilbert basically pokes fun at like office culture, right? Is that pretty much the gist of it? Okay.
Yeah.
So this dude Scotty Too Hottie went on a rant about um basically like the gist of the rant was basically, look, uh let's
Black
just
people
go
are a
back.
hate group. Yeah.
Black people are a hate group, and just go back. Let's just take it back 50 years and be segregated.
Yeah.
Like,
Black people black people are not okay with white people. Therefore, if that is the case, then black people are a hate group and white people should stay as far away from them as possible. That's what he said.
and so I wanted to talk about this because I don't think that what he said is uncommon. This is just my opinion to a lot of white people.
Hmm.
I think a lot of white people feel this way to an extent, and probably will never share it publicly like he did, but this could be a reason why people don't, because I was just talking yesterday with a group after church, um and I said, look, I call myself a dismantler. I was like, is that a noun? It's a noun. I mean, it's a made up word.
I don't see why it's wrong.
But I was like, I mean, I mean, people call themselves abolitionists. I don't know what I am. All I know is I'm trying to dismantle. I'm trying to dismantle white supremacy. So call me whatever you want to call me. So in that title, um, for me, this could be different from someone else, right? Because when we're all in this and we all have different methods to the same goal, right? But for me, I do not tell white people to be upset with being white. Why would? Because that's contradictory to my whole point of self-love,
Right.
right? So love the skin that you're in, love all of that. And I just like, let's live into that. And how do we use your privilege? How do you take your privilege, knowing that you have privilege, and using it for good? And
Hmm.
and one of the things I ended with, I'm like, it's up to y'all to do this work, because I mean, you personally, Jesse, did not create white supremacy, but white people created white
Yeah.
supremacy.
Yeah.
So, you know, it, and that's the truth. And so I was, okay, don't get me wrong, and I'm not defending Scott Adams, and I think everything that has happened to him in the last 72 hours should happen to him. I'm not disagreeing with any of that,
Mhm.
but I'm just saying that let's kind of dissect what he said, like, because he really felt, what I heard in that rant was like, I'm not like, he really believes that he's not racist.
Hmm. Well, I
And
think, yeah,
I
go
don't
ahead.
understand that. I don't understand. Can you?
Well, I think most white people who aren't doing the work of dismantling white supremacy or who aren't doing the work of understanding what it is to be anti-racist, I think they would say, "Oh, no, I'm not racist because X, Y, and Z, because I know black people, or because I don't see color, or because I've read all of X, Y, and Z books." But at the same time, I think that in many ways, white people are like fixated on the idea of wanting to be good. And to be racist means you're not good. So obviously, white people are going to say, oh, no, I'm not racist, because that would inherently say, oh, no, I'm not good. And
Right.
so if I disassociate myself from anything that is not good, then I will keep a barrier between me and any of this reality that I have to face. And
Mm,
I cannot get anywhere near anything that says that I am not pure and good and upstanding.
right.
Um, and you know, it just completely absolves you from any guilt or any sort of reconciliation or restoration, which is so bullshit. It's just bullshit. Like, and I think what frustrates me is that it often comes from the Christian community,
Right.
which is all about, well, turn away from sin and turn towards God. And like sin and to reconcile is to reorient yourself towards God. So like you're constantly every Sunday, we're Presbyterians, we have our call to confession, we have our call to reconciliation, we have our assurance of forgiveness. You're constantly reorienting yourself towards God. And so you're never in this place of constantly being bad or not being good. Like God calls you good.
Hmm. Hmm.
God calls you love. Like you have been preaching pretty consistently over the last couple of months about self-love and God's love for you.
Yes.
And and you cannot stand here and say, "Well, I'm all good," without saying also that there are things that I need to work on. And
Yes.
both can exist at the same time, and that doesn't mean that you're suddenly not okay and that suddenly God doesn't love you. It just
Right.
means you need to do both. And it's okay to
Right.
have to do both. To be
Absolutely.
to be good and to still have to do work. Like
Yes.
they're not non like like exclusive or something.
Right. And and then he said, because I've done all of this, and where did it get me? So then I moved into a neighborhood that is predominantly white, that doesn't have a lot of black people. I mean, the rant was just ridiculous. But here's my also thing. Then there will always be, and in his case, he wants to quote Don Lemon.
Hmm.
And I don't even know. And Don Lemon hasn't like come out and said he was misquoted or whatever. But Don Lemon, I mean, don't get me wrong, but like people also move into areas that, as their income increases, they move into areas that they can afford. And I don't think it necessarily means that they're moving into areas because there's less black people.
Hmm.
It just proves the point that there's less black people in that tax bracket
Yeah.
that you can afford. Therefore, I mean, come on, sir. Like it was just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, the whole well, it was ridiculous, but it also, well, not but and it also, like, to be perfectly honest, the last what 10 days of Black History Month was just right-wing conservatives going off on this, like, what was it? What's her name? Marjorie
Taylor.
Crazy
Oh,
Pants? Yeah.
yeah. Did you say
Say,
crazy pants?
yeah, I couldn't remember her name. Going off and saying that we should what and like separate again, as annex ourselves or secede from whatever,
Yeah.
and then people coming out of the woodwork and saying that they agree with her, or
But
like,
isn't that like treason?
yes, it's 100%
Okay.
for what she said as a sitting member of Congress. What she said violates the Constitution, and she should be, by the Constitution, removed from office.
So
Yeah,
make it make sense. Like I don't understand.
it doesn't make sense, and we're not holding anybody accountable to what they're responsible for.
Right.
And it just like it's just that last like the last 10 days of white people didn't get enough attention, so let me just throw all of these controversial statements out here
Right.
and like, oh, I don't understand. I
So
love
one
it.
of the things I also wanted to like just touch base on, and I did some research on this because people were complaining of um Sunday's Washington Post headline.
Hmm.
Dilbert creator says his reputation is destroyed after racist rants. And a lot of people came out the woodworks and were like, the headline is inaccurate. Even award-winning journalist Soledad O'Brien even spoke out on it,
Hmm.
and said the headline could be more accurate. I mean, he went on a racist rant and destroyed his reputation. Maybe say that, right? So I did some checking because I'm not a journalism major,
Hmm.
but from a credible source who I didn't ask if they wanted me to name them. But so I'm not going to name the person because but but so this person that I trust highly mentioned that uh because it's a direct quote, well, not a direct quote, but they say Dilbert creator says,
Hmm.
right? And so if you read the article, there's going to be a direct quote in there, so it's leading people into what the direct quote is. um Soledad's headline suggestion is correct. He did it to himself, but also acknowledged that old school editors would say it's better suited for an editorial because there's a slight hint of opinion. Even though his rant falls under AP guidelines for racists, this person didn't have a problem, and I will say it's a woman of color. This person didn't have a problem with the Washington Post headline. Um, the New York Times played it more carefully, she said, and um, and and then she goes on to say that um, I would have led the headline with a direct quote.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
just giving you some education on how journalism works, and because a lot of people, especially Black people, we are very leery of journalism and how it shows up and how certain stories come across in a very in a very, I guess, whitewashed way in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
um uh in particular, I remember this goes back to like the early 90s, during the Exonerated Five, which were originally called the Central Park Five, and how the New York Post, I was in New York at the time, teenager, um, and how they reported that story,
Right.
which was very, very, looking back on it, it was bad. It was bad journalism all the way through.
Hmm.
And I just, I think a lot of stuff now, like you don't expect that in like New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, but there's a lot of media that does a lot of clickbait,
Hmm.
right? And sensationalizes things instead of just telling the story.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I think you hit on it completely with clickbait, like sensationalizing things for the sake of clickbait. And as soon as somebody clicks on the link, that's money in somebody's pocket.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and I think too, like the way that, however people write the headline, I mean, the way that the Washington Post wrote it took away responsibility from Scott Adams. And I think that's what
Too.
what?
Yeah, I thought so too. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
You're good.
I thought so too. Like I
Yeah.
felt like it was very like, oh, woe is me.
Yeah. And I think that intentionality of was purposefully, I could be wrong because again, I'm not a journalist either, but like I think that was, if not clickbait, then it was intentionally polarizing for that sense of, you know, we're all about cancel culture right now and
Right.
like the debate about cancel culture. And here's this very misleading headline that says they fired me because of my rant and I lost my reputation because of X, Y, or Z. When the
Right.
reality it's I destroyed my own reputation. And because and like the consequences were I
Yeah.
got fired. Like
Yeah, it made it seem as though he wasn't the one ranting. Like if you read it, Dilbert creator says his reputation is destroyed after racist rant.
yeah.
Like who's the racist? Like it comes across like, oh my gosh, somebody did a racist rant on him. Like he wasn't the ones
Yeah.
spitting out the hate,
Yeah.
claiming that black people are a hate group. Child, please. I just can't.
And I mean, it's even well, like I mean, I listened to part of his rant, and after a while, I just got grossed out by him, and so I turned it off. But like, it was one of those things too that I'm like, okay, I know that people have labeled Black Lives Matter as a hate group or like
Right,
a terrorist organization. Is
right,
that what he's referring? Because it's either way, it's not justified because the Black Lives Matter like group is not a hate group. It's not a terrorist.
right, right.
But like, is he talking about all black people, or is he talking about Black Lives Matter, or is he talking like what's he talking about? Like, it was just a very big generalization of like black people are a hate group.
Let's just talk about how I just randomly put lip gloss on the middle of the show.
You said during our interview with Erica Green that you don't go on camera without red on your lips. So
I was just like, but I was totally in the conversation, Jesse. I
it's
really was.
okay. It's
But
okay.
yeah, I just don't feel like I agree with everything you just said. And I'm like, what does he mean by this?
Yeah.
And I am fascinated that whoever he was talking to like had no comment.
Yeah. Part of me is like, did you agree with him? Do you not want to hold him accountable? Or did you just want to let him say this and then watch it explode in his
And
face?
how did it leak?
Hmm. Yeah, how did you get there? How did you get to that part of the conversation that you just suddenly felt totally comfortable being like, fuck black people?
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it
that's
gets
what
you
he said.
nowhere. He's
Yeah,
like, white people just go away fat. Like, what?
I don't understand.
Wild. People are wild. Well, with that being said, overall, I thought this was a great Black History Month.
What were your highlights? What were your highlights for Black History Month, this time, this year?
Um, oh, that's a good question. I mean, I didn't like nothing like really like stands out and like, oh, I mean, I thought like, the Super Bowl is
Yes.
always in February, right? So,
And Rihanna killed it.
and Rihanna killed it. And so I think, I just think, I don't know. I think as a whole, I think our like Black people just seem to like really like live into their creativity and themselves in the month of February. I don't know, they'd be so extra,
Yeah.
right? Oh my gosh. What am I talking about? Amanda Seals replied to me on a comment. Like, yes, I was supposed to be extra for 10 whole days.
For people who don't know, can you tell people who Amanda Seals is?
Uh,
And the
I mean,
significance that this holds for you.
comedian extraordinaire, creator of Smart, Funny, and Black. She was Tiffany on Insecure, Issa Rae's
Hmm.
HBO sitcom for like 6 years,
Hmm.
and just overall activist. Like, I used to have a meme years ago. I don't know where it is, but it was like, it was the word creative, um, artists and activists all together. Somebody created it as like basically being being a activist artist at the same time, right? And I lump her in there. I think you know, I love her so much. And I would, and so she was talking about the differences between benevolence and getting paid what you're worth, right? And when to know the difference, right? And she said in her IG video that she doesn't negotiate with colleges. When colleges are asking her to perform or speak, it's no discount, even HBCUs. Yeah. She said, don't play with me, right? And I learned this years ago. So in my former life, I used to do virtual administration work for a lot of different various people, entrepreneurs, professors, speakers, theologians, evangelical speakers, right? I still got NDAs that I can't talk about them, that don't expire till like 2040. Yeah. So, because they just know I'm gonna write a book, but by 2040, I ain't even
on my calendar to be like 2040. Let's get
yeah, like by 2040, they nobody's even gonna care about them. So, but yes, I know where bodies are buried, child. But anyway, so she was talking about this. So I don't have an NDA against it. So I didn't put this in my post, but I'll share. So I was on a temporary 6-month contract with Reverend Dr. Monica Coleman. Love, love, love her. I don't know if you know. So you do know her. Okay. It was the best 6 months ever, right? I knew going into it, it was temporary. So, but I just soaked every time she spoke, I was like this, right? And so I would get the emails of her speaking engagements, right? And so mind you, I could barely get a book sold during this time. So and I was aspiring to be like her one day, right? Without having to, get the dual degrees. Without having to go to seminary and become a whole doctor and right. But but with that said, and she has built a platform around mental health and religion, especially with Black women, in the world of academia, and is a sought after speaker. And it's not really surprisingly, but surprisingly, a lot of PWIs, which are predominantly white institutions, and some of these places would want her to do like everything, like a 45-minute keynote, a talk back with the graduate students for right, a reception, and and for someone who is very much an introvert, right, that's a lot of emotional labor, number one, right, a lot of prep, all of that. And she didn't back down on her feet, and she would say, this school has a $300 million endowment, this school has $500 million, this school, they have the money. And never once, they would say their budget is modest, and they would say they'd have to take it up, they'd have to get special approval, but they never once, Jessie, no lie, would come back and say, oh, we can't do it. They made a way.
Yeah.
And I learned in that 6 months, like, know your worth.
And then add tax.
And then add tax, right? So I say all that to say, I shared my story on Amanda Seals' post, and my girl replied back, and it made my day. She liked and replied. I screenshotted it, and I've been living like a celebrity for like 10 days, because I just like when I'm feeling like I can't do something, I'll be like, girl, but Amanda Seals replied back to you.
Validation.
Right. So I'm like, you know what? This is good stuff. So yeah. So February 2023 has been most divine.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can't complain.
So February 2024 has to live up to Amanda Seal. So
Yes, I gotta like meet somebody in person. I have put on my bucket list though, go to the NAACP awards.
hmm.
It just popped in my mind. I was watching it on Saturday and I was just like, I want to be there with all that energy.
Yeah, you should. You should go. Even if it's just like sit in the cheap seats.
Right.
You'll be there.
Yeah. So,
But this is our last episode of Black History Month.
and yeah, so Women's History Month starts next week.
Yes, and we have Pavita Singh from Girls Health Ed.
Who was in town, and our schedules didn't match up this weekend, so I didn't see her in person.
Can you, because I don't know if we really got into it when we interviewed her next week or when you'll hear it next week, but can you kind of give everybody a heads up of how you know Pavita and like how you came into the same circles?
Yeah, so Pavita is it works for the publishing company that publishes all my books.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a project manager and a really amazing editor. So if you ever need a book edited or anything, she can do that. She was editing my newsletters when I was doing newsletters. I gotta go back to that. But I feel like if someone, I know this sounds crazy, but this is how my life is set up right now. I can write, like if somebody wanted me to ghostwrite for them, I could totally do that, right?
Yeah.
But writing for myself right now is just such effort.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting my next book that probably won't come out to 2025, but just by number one, the rate in which I'm writing, and then the fact that I don't release any books in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So
What's
I
your book?
probably won't finish the book until it won't even be ready to go to editing until the end of this year.
Right.
And so
What's your book about? Or is
so
that still a secret?
it's not really a secret. The title, but I shared the title with you though.
I think you did, yeah.
Yes. So it's kind of like the marketing people can figure out how we're gonna market it. But it's really like how I became me. Like it is a book on liberating yourself from what you know and perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it is I don't know. I don't know how to share what it's about without giving away the title. So
Yeah.
come back next week because I'm gonna process this. But it's all about, it's all about paying homage. I pay homage to women that helped me,
Mm-hmm.
like from my mother, my grandmother. I talk about like my friendships
Mm-hmm.
when I wasn't a great friend, when I've been a good friend,
Yeah.
and how I learned how to become a good friend,
Yeah.
mistakes, and like this walk into becoming this activist. Which I don't even look at myself as an activist, but somebody told me that I was.
Why don't you look at yourself as an activist?
Because
You
like
wrote a whole workbook for white people to like to dismantle white supremacy. How do you not see yourself as an activist?
I've only been to like 3 protests in my whole
What is
life.
that? What is that? Okay, that's performative allyship on some level.
Boom.
So
I get
like
it. I get it.
if a white person came to you and said, "Oh, I've been to 3 protests. I'm an activist," you'd be like, "What else are you doing?" That's bullshit.
Yes.
So
Yes.
like
You're right.
how do you not think that you're an activist? How do you not think that you're an
I
activist?
mean, because I look at, I mean, and yes, that is performative, but like, I do want to be, I well, I don't think I don't want to compare because I tell my clients all the time, stop
Okay.
comparing yourself. But I do look at like the Tamika Mallory's and um the Kimberly Jones, and they're like on the ground, like, meeting with people and organizing and doing like this really amazing community organizing things. And I just type from the comfort of my home.
All right, I'm pushing back on you on that. I'm not discrediting
Right.
everything you said, and I'm not validating your feelings about that. Is that where God is calling you?
And I don't feel that. You're absolutely right. And so thank you for,
And you are
yeah,
still advocating for Black people and for dismantling white supremacy.
yes, absolutely. And I did say this yesterday during my talk back that, when Alicia, my now 13-year-old, asked me what was I doing like during the protest.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "About what?" That was like this fire of like, what can I do? Right. And it wasn't, and my thing was, it didn't take me long to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just used the gifts that I have. Right. Cause I was like, I didn't necessarily see myself on the front line. Like my knee be hurting. I,
Yeah.
I'm joking when I say stuff like that. Like I'm not using that as an excuse, but I'm like, you know, the younger people are more prone to go out and right. And
Yeah.
so what can I do in that movement? Well, I can do what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But like even our legends though, Jesse, like when they were younger, they were on the front line. Like John Lewis was on the front line at 20. Now I'm not 20, but you know what I'm saying? Like the people that we admire have had some level of frontline protesting in their resume.
And that's true. And again, we're not comparing, but I also want you to look at it from the perspective of being on the front line looks different than it did during John Lewis's time.
Yes, I agree. And they
And,
had, yes.
and you are
Oh,
using
absolutely.
the gifts that you have to advocate in a way that reaches not a broader audience, but reaches a different audience than John Lewis necessarily was looking at.
You're absolutely
Like,
right.
and you're dismantling white supremacy within a system that is almost predominantly all white. And if you can't see the crazy amount of advocacy work that's in that, like, oh my gosh, like truthfully, the only person that you need to advocate for is yourself and your children. Like you don't need to advocate for anybody else. You've already, in the words of Andrea or Ariana DeBose, you did the damn thing. And so
Thank you. But I just, you know, that is all well and good. But also, like, my soul can't rest because I love people
yeah.
and I love this church.
And that's what
I'm
makes you
about to get, I'm about
that's
to get all emotional.
that's okay. That's what makes you such a great advocate though. I think anybody listening to this who knows you is probably sitting here going, "What the hell is she talking about?" Like it,
I love the people. I love people. And I just want,
I'm
uh,
gonna I'm gonna talk to Dina because I know that Dina Bickle is the administrative coordinator for National Capital Presbytery, and I know that they record all of the Presbytery meetings. And I'm going to ask her if I can have a copy of our last Presbytery meeting because I'm going to edit it out. That last prayer that you did, that was just like it was like an altar call of how to. This life matters because God says it does,
It does. You're right.
and your
I
life
did. All
matters.
right, Jesse. I'm an activist.
I'm sorry, but like
I'm
I want to shove your sermon back in your face and say like you are loved because God loves you and you are more than enough. And you are an
right.
amazing advocate and I will stop.
Well, I
Come
appreciate that. And I appreciate that. And you know what? And I think sometimes you do this work and you're like, is it making a difference? Is it creating impact? And you always wonder that, like, what you do kind of wonder, like, are you doing enough? And and so, all right, I'm back on track. I'm an activist.
You are.
I'm an activist. Okay, but also I'll be like, so because somebody, I think, no, it was my kid. Never mind, we're not going even. Because it was years ago. And my kid, my oldest, that we can never talk about because I have to get special permission. But so I won't say his name, but can't say anybody's name who I didn't get permission from. But he was like, I can't remember how old he was when my first book came out. But anyway, he was like, but you don't even have a Wikipedia page. I was like, that
watch me go to Wikipedia right now.
Right? Is that the street code? The street cred I need for you to be on board? I think it was like 14. It's like, but you don't even have a Wikipedia page. Like, really, Mo? That's a callback from earlier, y'all. So we're in the DMV, for those that don't know this. And I have two types of vocabulary. I have straight slang and I mix it all in there. And some days Jesse will get a very, very educated text message from me, right? Spelled all the words correctly. And then sometimes they're going to get, they are going to get the Ebonics version.
I like those.
It's the hood. It's the hood in me.
I feel like to wrap us back to where we started, like the fact if you can be your full self, if that means using like quote the Ebonics version or whatever, like, and you can be your full authentic self, and you don't have to be like, oh, I need to like whatever
Right.
for Jesse. That to me says that you trust me. That goes back to you telling me I need to cancel or reschedule. I need to get a hair appointment. Like that's being in relationship, and
all
that's
facts.
what I love about us. Is
absolutely because I was like, I was trying to figure out why did I call you Mo, but it was because we were preparing for this show, and I couldn't find something that I want to talk about. And they found it like in 5 minutes. I was like, I said, and so then I text back, you the MF GOAT of research, Mo.
Which is funny because that you said, because it's funny because you said, like, I found it in 5 minutes. In reality, I knew exactly where I was looking for it, but I was co-oping at my child's school, so I couldn't get on my phone right away. But I like knew exactly where I needed to go to get it for you. But you said I was the big, like the Mo, and in my head I was like, wait a minute, that means something different to her than it does in the queer community.
So in queer community,
what does Mo mean? In the queer community, it's like almost like the big Mo, like you're a big homo.
Oh.
But I'm like, that's not what she's saying. This is a compliment.
Only a compliment. And so then I was like, I wonder if they know that this is a good thing. like right. And so I went back.
If it comes from you, and you're saying it to me, unless you're specifically like telling me like you're crazy, Josie, I generally try to just take things as a compliment. And then
Right.
I'll be real, if I have to, I'll go on like Urban Dictionary and be like, what does this mean?
Right, cool. Because then I was like, and Mo is a universal DC term that
Yeah,
means everybody. But
yeah.
it's only people, you only call people Mo if you like know them, you ride with them, you like they your folks, right? Like,
That's who we are in
yeah,
relationship. I love
pretty
you.
much. I love you more.
Happy Black History Month, Shawnee.
Happy Black History Month, friends.
See you next week.
Yeah.
The Embracing Race podcast, hosted by elders Shawnee McElwain and Jesse Littlejohn, tackles all topics from pop culture to faith and the intersectionality of white supremacy and racism. Nothing is off limits, as we hope to educate and transform with radical love. For more information, visit us at embracingrace.online or on Instagram at embracing_race_podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, or if you would like to submit a comment or question, please email embracingracepodcast@gmail.com.